big mistake.
What is going on, everybody?
Welcome to Strictly Art Live number 66. I'm your host, Rob Wilson, and it is Friday, March 28th, 2025. And it is 10 a.m. I terribly apologize. I overslept. I am running late, but we are live here in the DMV, streaming 2 times on YouTube, here on Kick, here on Twitch, and Rumble. Today, we have a all-star show to cover a number of subjects. And without haste, I cannot slow down. Ladies and gentlemen, like I said, I apologize. Running late. Happens to the best of us. Overslept. Stayed up too late. So today, we are going to cover Solo Leveling episode 12 of season 2. John Cena's heel turn. I just added that on. Shaolin Avengers trailer. We're going to check that out. That's a remake to the rendition of the 1973 edition of the same title, Kung Fu. Martial arts flick. The value of art in today's landscape. Comic book industry matrix. Commentary on a segment that I found. And Super Cute episode number 1. I got a chance to check it out. People were bragging that it was better than Solo Leveling, so I had to see it for myself. So we're going to get into all of that while I do some drawing. So first up, let's go ahead and check out the Shaolin Avengers trailer, if you don't mind. I hope everyone's doing good. Like I said, I just woke up from a death sleep. It was great. And after this show, I'm going right back to sleep. And then I'm going to work. You know, that routine. All right, let's get started here. Without further ado, here we go. This just came out. Enjoy.
If you win, we'll shut down our school and never teach Kung Fu again! Yeah! Wait, what? The true spirit of a martial arts fighter.
Wolfbang MMA is gonna crush that spirit.
Kung Fu forever.
All right. Now, if you don't know me personally, I am a big martial arts fan. I share plenty of martial arts on my stories on Instagram. Like I said, you got to know me in order to know that. So, the majority of my comics is meant to be sci-fi action, and I hope to include a lot of martial arts into it. But this, I thought was great. If you didn't see the date, it's already out. It came out the 10th of March. Shaolin Avengers by Martial Club. Please check them out. I've seen it. It's awesome. I didn't want to do them disjustice by, just showing the whole thing for today's show because today's show is rather busy. So, me personally, I loved it. I thought it was a homage to pretty much everything that dealt with martial arts, from your old classics to your fighting games. such as Street Fighter. You saw a little bit of a Kuma stance there with the MMA fighter, and it was a pretty cool story. The you know the independent film's what, $25, or I'm sorry, 25 minutes, and it's worth seeing. So I highly recommend it. Definitely check them out. Martial Club. They actually got tons of skits on YouTube. Definitely check them out and enjoy. Moving on. I think that's the only trailer we're showing today. So we're gonna go ahead and get to the art part of things. Please like, comment, and subscribe, guys. If you got anything to say, please speak your mind. Don't only speak them in the shadows. So this is a piece I started working on when I was on the when I was last on the art draw stream with the Madness Comic Network or Madness Entertainment Group. Please check them out as well. That's the group that I'm part of. I'm actually streaming from their YouTube as well. Still running late. I get it. It happens to the best of us. And I will admit that. No problem. No doubling down here. Because if you double down too much, you might find yourself doubling down to dig your own grave. Sorry. Just came up with that on a whim. Content creator, artist, philosopher. That kind of thing is what I do. So come up with all those goodies. Alright, so moving on, we got solo leveling. Let's see here. We got some really cool highlights. This is episode 12, season 2. Jinwoo is on the scene, or Jin Sama, whichever way you want to call him. He's on the Jeju Island. And it's setting it off because he used his soldiers to shadow, get it? His soldiers to shadow other S-rank heroes. They showed up on the island. They started blocking the ants before anyone died in the cave, majorly at least. And he came in to hold them back and tried to create a pathway for them to get away. And then shows up the Ant King. The Ant King, as he's looking for the King of all humans, because he thinks fighting the regular soldiers is not enough because they already took his queen. Now it's Jinwoo, and it's the Ant King, Beru, one-on-one, or so we thought. So they trade blows, go toe-to-toe, and pretty much match each other's strength to a degree and endurance and all that. The Ant King's key endurance feature is because of his outer shell, but it's a shell, and Jinwoo eventually cracks it. So therefore, the Ant King results in poisons, which we find out that Jin Sama is immune to due to his passive skill, which is great. I actually had to watch this stuff again last night because I wanted to make sure it was fresh in my mind. I didn't want to miss any details. So because of all of that, Jin was standing up to the Ant King. The Ant King transforms into a massive demon-like creature to increase the stakes of the battle. And as he stated, going blow for blow will be pointless. And that's where we got a more intense battle. And during the intense battle, we also got the Ant King starting to resort to cheap tactics, and Jinwoo actually getting a new skill. I think it was called mutilation. It's like 1,000 slashes. It's ridiculous. So it was pretty brutal. And after a while, the battle just got really OP. Jin was lighting them up. Let's see. So Jin Sama's shadow army and his own overwhelming strength were on full display, making the fight a visual treat. No doubt about it. I guess this was this series, this anime's version of Perfect Cell. the ant king Baru, bug, insect with wings, all that stuff. Um, so we got to see, kind of like, I guess maybe a homage to Dragon Ball Z, the Cell games, because the ant king was unmatched. He was looking for, top fighter of the humans, and then so lo and behold, it happened, and he met his match, and he started resorting to cheap tactics, poison, flying away, um, calling on his army to help him, and all that stuff, and then um, straight up running away because the ruler's hand was snatching him back down to the ground. Absolutely great episode. It ended with a subtle Easter egg hinting the potential return of the deceased S rank healer um, Ming Bain Gayu, who might help save Cha, one of the other characters. But one of the things, one of the things that we didn't know that didn't follow. Excuse me. One of the things they didn't follow up on is that within the Ant King shell was one of the S-rank hunters, or that's what they emphasized in the previous episode. Nonetheless, episode 12 was great, solo leveling, wrapped up, phenomenal. But wait, I saw a schedule for tomorrow. There's a 13th episode of solo leveling. It's on the way. Get hyped, get ready, get right. You know, pretty cool. All right, and so that's the segment on solo leveling, season 2, episode 12. And I want to go ahead and make a hearty mention of Super Cube, which people have been talking about. The main character seems to be fighting agents in the sky with cubes of some sort. They seem to defy the rules of the world. The agents, which look like characters from the Matrix, the agents were pursuing this young girl, and this guy managed to meet them head on and, protect the girl, kick butt as the agents summon buildings and crazy stuff to attack the main character. And then from there, once the initial, fight is completed, for shock value, the first episode should always grab you, right? That's what they say. And this definitely did that of Super Cube. Hard to say where to watch it. I can't tell you. But there are clips out there all throughout the internet. But yeah. Once the hypeness dies down, I guess they kind of go into the origin, and the main guy of and protagonist of Super Cube, he's fighting off some bullies, and then he jumps into a river, allegedly drowns himself, and then he gets activated by the Super Cube, which is some kind of supercomputer that controls all kinds of stuff, throughout reality or something like that. And it talks to him, it gives him a heads up. But it does definitely have a solo leveling-esque type concept. Whereas instead of menus for the player to, interact with it, the cube itself actually does talk to the actual possessor and lets them know of, the potential and stuff like that, and what can be done with the cube. Exceeding all types of possibilities. So that was the first episode. I think it's up to episode 4. Ain't paying for nothing right now. I'm just not doing it. So that's all I got as far as Super Cube. My first impression. I thought it was interesting. I'm not into not all the time at least. If it's going to be better than something else, sure, I'll admit it. But I'm not into, the next new shiny toy, that type of thing. Like, better than going on. I had some buddies that they used to do that just out of sarcasm. This was better than, whatever movie you might have mentioned and all that kind of stuff. I'm not really into that. Supercube looks pretty cool. I have the personal stake in solo leveling, seeing that this hero went from a zero to a hero. That concept, I think, is a little more appealing to me as opposed to starting on the top and then, hey, here's my backstory. That's my personal opinion. Other people may have other opinions in regards to that, and that is fine. That is wholeheartedly fine. Um, People can have different opinions. That is how I look at things. And that's the segment for Supercube. So next up, let's talk about John Cena's heel turn, which is pretty fun. It's pretty fun. It's pretty funny. It's interesting to see that it was activated by The Rock, and then from there, The Rock just kind of disappeared. I thought he would have a little more influence on John Cena's heel turn, which was directed by The Rock, you know. But nonetheless, it's going to be John Cena, Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania, and looks like a solid main event ticket. This is John Cena's, last year in the WWE, and he's definitely picking people off by being kind of like a overprivileged spoiled brat, which is fine. Maybe he's using this practice to play into another character that he'll be in a movie at a later date. I think Peacemaker season 2 is on the way. That was pretty good in my personal opinion. Again, not everybody liked it, and that is fine. But I thought Peacemaker was a little different, and it came right off the heels of the Suicide Squad, James Gunn Suicide Squad, which were two movies that I liked. I thought they were decent when you're dealing with low-level characters. High-level characters, well, we know how I feel about that when it comes to James Gunn and Superman. And that's fine. That's fine. I'm not going to drop the hammer on this segment. I'm definitely not going to do that. So, we got one more thing to cover on that end. But yeah, John Cena's heel turn, I do enjoy. I thought it was pretty funny, pretty entertaining. I like how, he's accumulated years, 25 years to be exact, 25 years of data to use against the entire crowd. And he's used that quite masterfully, even talking about the "you can't see me" joke. When a wrestler does a major heel turn, he tends to talk about why he did it. Especially after being a good guy for so long. That happens. So for him to cover that he was not just a victim of what the fans wanted all these years, he also got to really dig into the heels of things that the fans have said, have created memes, and the memes that the fans have used over years. So it's pretty interesting. I thought it was pretty interesting. I enjoyed it. So let's see here. I'm looking for. Give me one second. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna go into this segment, and I'm gonna be doing this over the next couple of episodes of Strictly Art Live, talking about the comic book industry. Because going into this apparatus, this machine that exists, I really thought that it was about making books, but it's about so much more. And unfortunately, the more part of making comic books tends to trickle into the area that is not that positive. And it screws people over, it screws over people's livelihood, all that kind of thing. So I'm learning wholeheartedly. I have to learn. If I don't learn, I don't evolve, and then I fall for the same mistakes that somebody else might have. But these right here are lessons that I think are important. So with that being said, let's go ahead and I'm going to do a quick reminder. I am a comic book artist, and here's where you can find all of my stuff.
Hey, Claudius. You killed my father. Big mistake.
Yeah, so that's where you can find all my stuff. I do have metal prints, physical prints, digital artwork as well available. And I'm currently working on my comic book. This is one of the posters which you've seen me work on earlier. This is one of the posters that I have for it. Not the Batman, but my own other character, the guy in the suit behind the gate. But yeah, let's go ahead and go over this. This is a quick little 9-minute segment and tells a lot about the industry, which I think is helpful for not just myself, but others that are still learning about what's going on in this comic book space.
Over $30 billion. Bill Finger died broke. Joe Shuster co-created Superman. At 61 years old, he was working as a janitor, destitute, blacklisted from the comics industry, and begging DC for financial support. And this isn't just the distant past. Of the $170 million spent to make Captain America the Winter Soldier, not $1 went to the creators of the Winter Soldier. In fact, they were turned away at the movie's premiere. So why does this keep happening? And why does it seem to happen so frequently in comics specifically? Well, the answer is a bit more complicated than you might imagine, and to find out, we're going to look at a few of the key battles between creators and big companies, from the early days of comics right up into the battles that are still being fought today. The year is 1975. The Superman movie is going into production, and it's going to be the highest budget movie ever made. And across the desk of every major news organization comes a 9-page, single-spaced press release. The theme of that press release? That the creator of Superman has put a curse on the movie. Jerry Siegel was the original writer of Superman, and he and his co-creator Joe Shuster were both 61 and broke, Siegel working as a typist and Shuster a janitor. Neither were going to make a cent from the movie. After years of legal battles, they had run out of options to try and get paid by DC, and so they turned to the public for support. But let's back up. How did we get to that point? In 1933, while in high school...
Shout out to Matt Quadruple T and his coverage of the comic and manga industries and the history. Just started watching his videos. They seem to be pretty educational.
Siegel and Shuster came up with the idea of Superman. Over the next few years, they would refine the idea and pitch it to various publishers, all of whom rejected it. Finally, in 1938, the fledgling DC Comics agreed to run a Superman story in their new anthology called Action Comics. And Superman, as you may have guessed, was a huge hit. It started the superhero craze that persists until today and became the foundation of the shared DC universe. For the 13-page story that introduced Superman, and for the copyright to that character, Siegel and Shuster were paid $130. Now, let's talk quickly about copyright. In American law, the person who creates something owns the copyright to it, meaning for roughly 100 years, they control how their creation is used. One of the main ways copyright holders make money is through licensing, giving companies the right to use their creation in books, movies, video games, toys, whatever, in exchange for money. But Siegel and Shuster didn't license Superman to DC. They assigned DC the copyright, which means DC was able to publish the comics and license Superman without paying Siegel and Shuster a dime. For years, things were good for Siegel and Shuster because they were employed to write more Superman stories, and they were paid well for that, although their resentment built up as they realized just how successful their creation was becoming. But then the final straw came. They had pitched the idea of Superboy to DC, and DC had rejected it. But then, while Siegel's back was turned, they produced Superboy comics with other writers without his permission. And by his back was turned, I mean he was off fighting in World War II. So after getting back from winning World War II, Siegel and Shuster were pretty pissed and took DC to court to try and regain control of both Superman and Superboy. The judge ruled that Superman was owned by DC, but Superboy was owned by Siegel and Shuster, and they got a big payout from DC, along with getting fired. They would take DC to court again in the 70s and lose again. Their legal fights, combined with an industry blacklist for their repeated efforts to try and take back their creations, had left them both destitute by the mid-1970s. Thankfully, Siegel's press release worked. DC agreed to pay each of them a yearly stipend of $20,000 for the rest of their lives if they stopped coming after the copyright. Perhaps that's not all they deserved, but it was enough to get them to stop complaining. But the story doesn't end there, because a year after that press release, US copyright law was amended and a cancellation ability was introduced. At certain intervals during the 100-year life of a copyright, creators are allowed to take back their copyright. This was put in specifically for cases like Superman, where a creation turns out to be way more valuable than anyone had at first expected. And after many years of making money off the copyright, the company is forced to renegotiate with the original creator. And while that law came into effect too late for Siegel and Shuster, in 2001, Siegel's heirs used that clause and took back Superman. They quickly sold the rights back to DC in a lucrative deal, finally providing something close to fair compensation for the work Siegel and Shuster had done nearly 70 years earlier. So you're smart. If it's so easy to cancel a copyright, why doesn't everybody do it? That brings us to battle number 2.
And that's actually, I think, dealing with right now, I believe. Because I covered and I put it in some shorts where there's a legal battle going on with the Superman estate. And basically, they weren't compensated or they never got permission by the Superman estate. DC never got permission by the Superman estate to put Superman in, I think, the Justice League, Black Adam, and this new upcoming Superman movie by James Gunn, which that's rough. You know what I mean? That's something I can't even blame James Gunn for, because you go in there thinking that all the everything's ready to go. You know, as far as the legal side, director is supposed to be dealing with directing a movie, but the fact that this has been an ongoing issue, not just in James Gunn's lifetime, but for a long time. That the battle continues. It's a lot of tug and pull just to create good stories and create cool characters. Copyright battles has been the forefront throughout history when it comes to a artist or a person with a really good idea of a character. Once the person that creates the character, he may not be an artist. You include an artist, well, then that artist has a stake in it, especially for turning that mental vision into a physical or a visual manifestation. It is complex. And then once you get industry involved, you get legal involved, and it just turns into a firestorm. Good Lord.
2009, the family of Jack Kirby sent out copyright termination notices to the big companies for the characters he created. Now, you may know that Jack Kirby is the king of creating characters, so his family had to send out 45 of these notices. In response to the termination notices, Marvel acquiesced and paid Jack Kirby's family a nice big sum of money. Just kidding, Marvel sued them. You see, there's a funny exception to copyright termination law, and that's called work for hire. A creator can never terminate a work for hire agreement. Now, work for hire gets a bad rap, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's designed for creators who are working as full-time employees of a company towards a collective creative work. For instance, writing code for a software company or working on a movie. Marvel claimed that Jack Kirby's work was work for hire, done at the company's expense and under the company's direction. Kirby's family claimed he worked as a freelance creative in his home under his own direction and at his own expense, and Marvel merely published his work. Comics, especially ones set in a shared universe, sit in this weird gray area between something like a novel, which is clearly an individual work, and a movie, which is clearly collaborative. And the court struggled with this, at each level of the legal system making opposite decisions on whether it was work for hire or not. Finally, in 2014, the Kirby case was on its way to the Supreme Court, and Marvel got scared. They ended up settling with the Kirby family for a reported $30 to $50 million. Yay, finally a story with a victory for creators. Except maybe not, because since then, Marvel has used the Kirby case as precedent that all of the work done during that period was work made for hire. In 2021, Marvel sued Stan Lee's brother Larry Lieber, along with Gene Colan, Don Heck, and a bunch of other legendary comic creators and their families to stop them from canceling their copyrights. Now, you might not know the name Steve Gerber, possibly because he was booted from Marvel because he tried to sue them for control of Howard the Duck, which is also a way better comic than you're probably imagining. Gerber claimed that he had never assigned the copyright to Marvel. Marvel claimed that he had. And they had evidence. The back of his check. That's right, in the 70s, Marvel started printing contracts on the back of creators' checks, so it was physically impossible for them to endorse their check and deposit it without turning over their copyright to Marvel. This is the actual check that Gerber apparently sold Howard the Duck to Marvel.
That is a trap. That's why you always got to look at the small print when it comes to contracts with these big companies. That has been in every industry, every, new invention, every new patent. It's crazy. It's crazy the amount of history and shady dealings that has occurred throughout American history when it comes to copyright law, patent law, all that stuff. From toys to comics. And this is just entertainment stuff, to make money. Imagine things more important. Good Lord, some people have probably lost their lives. But going back to what part of this segment covered, imagine you're an artist, you create something, and then you go off to World War II, and a company does not honor its agreements with you while you're out fighting for the country in which that company exists. That's crazy. That is crazy to me. But, you know, these issues and road bumps have occurred in order to make things, I guess, a little bit better or create other accesses. Because, like the gentleman just mentioned, certain things have changed, where you can cancel a copyright or you can fight for the copyright after so many years or after XYZ time. It's interesting.
For. It's for $285. Like all of these cases, the Gerber case is a complex one that I'm dramatically oversimplifying, with lots at issue besides one check. But I think what's telling is that when Gerber needed help to raise the money for his fight with Marvel, who came to his side? Jack Kirby. Together they produced Destroyer Duck, a parody of Marvel and Howard that was sold to raise funds for his case. A bunch of other comic legends came to Gerber's side, but he ended up settling with Marvel and reportedly spent the rest of his life dogged by the legal costs. And the costs and risks of going against a big company is a real issue here. Gary Friedrich, the co-creator of Ghost Rider, also sued Marvel over his work during this period, and not only did he lose because of the contract on the back.
Wait a minute, I thought I was muted. I think I was muted on that one. But no, I was just saying, first time I saw Destroyer Duck was actually in Savage Dragon. So I had no idea he was connected to one of the creators of Marvel with Jack Kirby. But I mean, that the comic book industry, I guess, is so small with the big two, that everybody kind of knows each other. They go from one company to the other, and they vouch for each other, reputation, all that stuff. Back when reputation mattered, before the internet. So it's interesting. It is very interesting. Let's continue.
Of his check, Marvel sued him back for selling unauthorized Ghost Rider merchandise at conventions, and he was ordered to pay them $17,000 in damages, which, combined with his legal costs, left him destitute for the few remaining years of his life, dependent on the support of the comic community. But now it's the 80s, and everyone is wised up. Creators have become well informed about what has happened to their peers over the past few decades. DC saw this as a PR opportunity and started to offer better terms for creators, and I think that many of the people at the company were sincere in their efforts. The poster boy for that initiative was Alan Moore. He was on a hot streak at DC, and he's come out with a tiny little comic called Watchmen. And not only is he paid well for Watchmen, but he gets a reversion clause in his contract, saying that once DC is done with the Watchmen characters and hasn't used them for a year, the rights go back to Moore, and he can do with them whatever he wants. Well, Funny thing about Watchmen, DC has never stopped printing it. Since 1986, they've printed new copies each year, so the rights have never gone back to Moore. Totally legal, but he felt swindled by the whole thing and refused to work with DC ever again. Which brings us to today. We've ironed out the kinks, and finally both Marvel and DC give creators clear work-for-hire agreements, and they also get an incentive program if their characters become successful. Now, because we live in the age of the NDA, it's a bit hard to get concrete info on these contracts, but reportedly, that program leaves a little bit to be desired. For Marvel, if a character appears in a movie, the creator gets a $5,000 check and a thank you. And on top of that, both companies unilaterally decide whether a character is original enough to be considered an original creation. Famously, DC writer Jerry Conway created Power Girl, but he was recently denied royalties because they decided she was just derivative of Superman. Was this the case with Winter Soldier, who is a reinterpretation of a character co-created by Jack Kirby? This is where the idea of a shared universe gets really confusing. When a character is part of this shared universe,
Any clues yet as to why I would never want to work for the big two or Disney? Disney seemed cool at one point when I was growing up as a kid, but hell no. These people are nuts. They're always looking for some way to swindle you out of the money that they make. They don't want you, the creator, to make the money. The industry and the company always wants to take from you. They always use a method of wording and legality to screw you over. In this case, it would be a comic book industry matrix. Hence, the reason why I created the thumbnail that I did. Let's continue.
how do you assign the right amount of credit and money to everyone involved in building that universe? I sympathize with the companies that have to figure that out, but I think it's important that they do. Look, we've come a long way from the days when Bob Kane took Bill Finger's idea for Batman and sold it to DC and never admitted that he got his ideas from Finger until after his death, but I believe there's still room to grow. We all want the same thing, which is fair treatment for creators as well as for the companies that make their work possible, even if we won't always agree on what the best solution looks like. Finally, consider donating to the Hero Initiative, which helps pay the bills for struggling comic creators. It's crazy that it has to exist, but it's a good cause that you can help out today. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please hit the like and subscribe buttons and leave a comment down.
Man, that was brutal. So yeah, that's just some food for thought for anybody that is interested in going into the mainstream industries that exist when it comes to comic book creation. I, however, Rob Wilson, this guy, tend to stay more the path of the independent. If there are people that I can work with, great, absolutely great. But there are risks involved, big risks involved when it comes to working with other people or other companies. That has been proven with the segment that we've seen, and we'll cover more of those because I don't believe that having a great idea should make you poor. I don't believe that having a great idea that you want to share with the world should limit your income or limit your capabilities. With that being said, let's move on to the next segment, which is the value of your work in today's landscape. The value of your artwork in today's landscape. This will be the final segment. I'm going to try to ramble on for the next 10 minutes as best I can to cover this subject. I got a story when I was trying to become a tattoo artist at one point, because I kept hearing from so many people, oh man, you ever thought about getting into tattooing? No, but let me give it a try. It's mid 2000s and I'm cheered on by people. Yeah, man, definitely pursue it. Check it out. about 2005-ish, 2007-ish, somewhere around there. And I started collecting tattoo magazines, seeing some really great artwork in there. And I started to implement styles. I draw my own stencils, ideas of what I thought might be cool at the time of for tattoo designs. Drawing lots of stars, drawing hearts, common stuff like that. Things that I think may be viable on the tattoo market. So I started to take my portfolio to a couple of folks. There's one guy, actually, it was he had a group of tattoo artists. It's where I got my first tattoo, on my back, upper back. And he was looking to hire more people. He had some rule where, like, hey, if you worked for him, you had to show up at the tattoo club in DC or something. It was something like that. And most tattoo shops, they charge an apprenticeship fee. It's like $3,000, $5,000, somewhere around that, maybe even $7,000. It's an interesting thing because it's like a handshake agreement. There's no real, like, well, the ones that I dealt with, there's no actual, like, paperwork, binding contracts that were involved, because the apprenticeship work basically had you working in the shop for free labor. That is what I deal with. Now, that guy got in a whole lot of trouble, like DUIs out in California, even though he had a shop going in DC and stuff, and he got it locked up, and his girlfriend told me what happened. So I went my merry way, moving on. Checked out a tattoo shop in DC. Guy was like, yeah, it's going to be 5 G's, and that doesn't even include the tattoo gun, because you didn't need a license to be a tattoo artist in DC. I was like, oh, okay, sounds cool. And by that point, I was coming towards the end of my restaurant tenure. I worked in the restaurant business for like 10 years. I was trying to get off the heels of that and, do my artwork for full time, that kind of thing. So, yeah, but who has like 5 G's just to drop, off the break? I get it. Life under George W. Bush for American people was probably pretty good. Stimulus checks and all that good stuff. But not I. That didn't work out too well for me. So I moved on, and then there was another tattoo shop in Maryland. They have multiple locations. I went and got a tattoo there. And I talked to the guy that was running his tattoo shop. And this is where I'm going with this, the premise. Brought my portfolio. It had both traditional art and digital art. So as he's going through my portfolio, he says, can you do traditional art? I say, yeah, there's some traditional art pieces right in there. And he's flipping through, then he says, can you do digital? I say, yeah, there's some digital pieces in there too. Then he says, can you do watercolor? And I said, sure. Haven't done it lately, but I'm sure I can do it. Not a problem. And then he says, can you do color pencil? I say, sure. Yeah. Haven't done it in a while, but too easy. So I say, yeah, so I'm interested in the position that you have. I'd be willing to travel, not a problem. And then he says, but you live too far. So at that point, I say, hey, I get it, man. I thank you for your time. I'll go ahead and take my portfolio. and I'll go along my merry way. So in my mind at that point, he created rebuttals for me to not be eligible in his eyes. For whatever reason. I'm not narrowing down to what the reason is, but for whatever reason, he created his rebuttals around every corner. Any excuse. At the end of the day, it did not come down to my artwork. It came down to a location, which I thought was crazy to me. It was silly. Silly nonsense. So I say all of that to say this. When you have your artwork, whether it's traditional, digital, or in some form of physical medium, there are people in this world that are going to come to you with some kind of disqualifiers, an excuse, reasons to not like your artwork, reasons to not purchase your artwork, reasons to say, oh, well, if I did it, I would do it this way. Those are not people you want to look at as far as valuing your artwork, because they don't. They don't value the time and effort that you put into it. They don't value the work, doing something else on another day job or night job just to get time to do the stuff that you like. They weren't there for the whole process of the artwork in which you came up with this piece that you thought was somewhat decent. They weren't there for that. And they probably wouldn't care to be. They saw the finished product and said, oh, well, this is wrong. That's wrong. XYZ. I'm not saying don't take constructive criticism. I'm just saying look at the people that do give you criticism. You have a right to determine, does this person have my best good in mind with the advice that they're giving? Have they been there alongside me during the whole road? Or did they just show up for some piffy comments? Did they show up to grandstand in front of friends and peers? Are they a customer? Have they ever bought your work? So you got to look at things like that to understand if they have not contributed any skin in the game, pay cash, transaction for works rendered, any of that. Hey, you got to go towards the customer. You have to. If you don't, things are not going to really grow for you. And I'm going to tell you that from personal experience. What I did enjoy when I first came to this independent space, drawing with people, being online, that was fun. Being amongst fellow artists, getting feedback. But after a while, here's what I learned in the independent space. My clientele, as in people that have paid money for my services rendered in artwork, was quite lucrative, decent as a side job before I showed up here. Here, until I produce a book, it doesn't exist. And it's really weird. So, I'm not going to sit back and wait to be acknowledged by peers. I'm not. That's not my personal type of thing. Because at the end of the day, associations. What up? I thought I saw. Oh, it is Kirby on YouTube. What is going on, sir? How you feeling? Yeah, we gotta catch up, man. It's been a while. It's been a good little while. Work's been crazy, so yeah, I'm definitely. I'll try to hit you up this evening. Whatever your time zone might be. Kirby, ladies and gentlemen. That guy is pretty awesome. He's been through some rough, tough stuff. But definitely check him out on YouTube. I think he shows up on um, LRG's channel, um, Dillard, Drawing with Dillard. He's on quite a few channels now. Moving on up. But yeah, I have to emphasize, if things are not working the way that you hoped, as far as people valuing your comic, take it somewhere else. And when I say that, expand your audience, expand where you go to share your stuff. Because if nothing's happening and people are just saying, hey, yeah, that looks nice, great job, and that's it, and no one's like saying, hey, I like your work so much, I want to purchase it. Or, hey, um, I like your style to the point where, are you willing to do a commission piece? You know, that I think that is important. That is important because if people never make cross over that threshold, something's kind of odd. You know what I mean? You can make as many friends you want, but if you're not making money with the artwork that you're doing, that's kind of weird. And especially if you got a business stake in it, that's weird. That's not how a business runs. Just by, an accumulation of friends. It just doesn't work that way. But let me see. Kirby says, oh no, no moving up, just making friends. I like making friends. Hey, I respect that, man. I respect that. People have many different reasons for why they're here. You could be retired, so, that might be the extent to where you want to go. But personally, I just, in my case, and again, this is some feedback I'm just providing of the value of your artwork. What is your value? What is your artwork valued at? If it's not valued to the point where someone's willing to pay for it, that's weird. Sure, you can see artwork in a museum, but that's already been paid for at some point. Whether the artist is alive or dead, it has some kind of intrinsic value, not just like visual value. You can't go to a museum and take the artwork off of display. You will be under arrest. Why? Because it has value. It's not meant to be taken or snatched or stolen. It is weird to me in this independent space where people will see your work and say, all right, that's cool. And then next thing you know, they may have a version of your work in some story somewhere. So they rather not pay for it, but turn around and try to make money from it. Because from what I just showed you, that segment about how the comic book industry has made some people broke in the industry, bad habits from the industry has trickled down into the independent space too. Now, I'm not blaming no one person, but let's say, hey, you worked for Marvel or DC. You did things their way. And then when, let's say, you left Marvel or DC, you come to the independent space and you still do things your way. Or even worse, because you're not beholden to a deadline. So at that point, the legal battle of the industry trickle over to the legal battles of the independent space. That is a very unique, dynamic concept that I think is it doesn't make it fun to create art and get paid to create art and make money to create art and put stories out there. It really doesn't make it fun. Now, like, hey, look, like I said, if you're on a retirement or something and you chilling and you don't need to make money off the art, cool, great, you know. um, there's no loss at that point for you. But there are others that are trying to do such. And for some of them, it's cost them their life, man, just by chasing your dream. I think that is a very dangerous thing, because having a passion and love to create art, create stories, tell stories for other people, to be a storyteller, it's fun. But when you find out that people just um, hammer you on the internet, not even in person. That's why I think there's an important point to take a break from the internet, like today, so that way your mental well-being is good. Go out, work out, exercise, walk in the park, do those things in nature. You know, take a break from getting peer approval. But like I said, as far as any other industry, because most industries are there to make money, it is weird that this one in particular, on the indie side, where the sins of the father via the comic book industry go into the sins of the son via the independent side of it. And it's not without casualties on both sides. That's it, ladies and gents. That's all I got. I'm Rob Wilson. I'm a comic book artist. I do love to draw art. Um, I would love to do it full time, but because things are the way they are, hey, I got a day job or night job, and I am beholden to that. But I do have VKP in the works. Number one, putting it all together myself. Got to do it because I don't trust much of nobody these days. But yeah, that is on the way, and that's all I got to say. Y'all take care. Have a great Friday. Be safe. Have a good weekend. Peace out. All right. Later.
Welcome to the future.
Transferring to autopilot mode.
A place where good guys finish last.
I'll make them wish they'd never been born.
A quick draw is the best defense.
Nothing personal, but I'm here to kill you.
And your wits are all you can count on. A future where one treasure is coveted above all else.
Tell me the coordinates of the galactic ley line.
Legend speaks of the galactic ley line, offering the ultimate power of the universe to those who seek its glory.
The doors have opened.
Utilizing the latest technology, a living starship has been built with the power to find the galactic ley line.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All systems green.
By twist of fate, it has fallen into the hands of an outlaw. An outlaw named Gene Starwind.
Well, let's blow some hot kisses to my devoted fans.
His luck is about to change. Goodbye, Gene. Together with his crew of bounty hunters, he'll take to the stars.
Accelerate and fly down their throats.
Outlaw Star. Weekdays at 5:30. Time to roll the dice. Only Toonami.
Hey, ladies and gents, I have one more thing to share with you. By the way, thank you, Kirby, for stopping by. Much appreciated. Like I said, we'll catch up. And as a matter of respect, Omer Glitch, he gave me a shout out on his show's Hump Day show the other night. So I want to issue him the same respect. Be sure to check out Omer Glitch on YouTube and on X. Not the X Men, but X. He does draw streams, has tons of guests, spends a lot more time than I wish I had to do artwork. So much respect to him. Check out his stuff. All right. Now I'm officially peaced out. All right, y'all.
Some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill.
Hey, Claudia.